Hello, welcome to the Steve and Mark Discuss podcast. Today I'm going to be raising a subject and I'll see how Steve responds. Right,
Hi, people.
last night I was watching an episode of a 1970s crime series from the UK called The Professionals. Now, this series, it was an episode that was been banned for about 20 years or 25 years. Oh, yeah. And I was watching it on Tubi TV, which I tend to watch over Netflix now. A, because it's free, and B, it has much better content on, in my opinion. Yeah,
Somebody's getting paid for saying this. Somebody is getting paid.
yeah.
It's to be sponsoring you.
I can honestly say I have no links from Tubi, only that I do mention them a lot because they're a source of my entertainment, and I can't recommend them high enough. But
Go on the professionals.
yeah, the
Professional.
professionals. Yeah,
Brody and company.
yeah, Bodie and Doyle. Now, in this, it is actually looking at the issues of race relations in the UK. Now, I'm not going to go into this about race relations. Yeah, it's an interesting one. It has actually some quite robust language in it, which was rather interesting. And the attitudes, it did show some attitudes, which were surprising at the time, surprising now. Yeah, I mean, it's not language that you and I wouldn't have heard. Yeah, but it was making a point, which again is rather interesting given today's climate. This was happening 40 years ago. Still a good series, wholly recommend it. Yes, the dialogue's a little bit jaded now and things like that, but the interplay between the characters is still good. They had lived a lot of it when they were doing it, apparently. There was tension between the actors that came through on the screen, but yeah, it was still a well made series when series were well made, and that got me thinking. Um, Now, whether I'm getting to the age now, and I can give you an excuse, where I watch modern series and I think this isn't original, this isn't fresh, this is a load of nonsense. Um, Now, this notion of sending out messages, what they call virtual signaling, is not new either. When you do revisit things from the 70s and the 80s, and I mean TV, films, and general TV programs, it was always been there. It's always been there. It made us think. It made us talk at school. We used to watch these programs, um, which again, I was thinking, yeah, is interesting. So it has its roots there, but it didn't affect our enjoyment. It wasn't the main reason for the show. The main reason for the show was there was to entertain us and to bring in points later. Um, there was certainly, yeah, had female characters in it. The professionals, exactly. I mean, yeah, last week I'd had enough in the UK of all this misogyny and bigotry and everything else. So I decided to watch an episode of The Professionals to get away from it. Yeah. Another good series was The Sweeney, another good police drama. And then we had Minder, which again was totally fictional. It wasn't set in reality really, but fun. Again, we enjoyed it, but it raised issues from the time. Now I'm thinking about this, and again in America we had different crime series there. I'm not sticking with crime series because they're the most popular. I mean, into the 90s, we had The Sopranos. You watch some series now, either from the BBC or Netflix or other channels. I don't have Amazon. Yeah, I mean, even the channel I've just mentioned now that I'm not being paid for by have started to produce their own material that is possibly, yeah, to want of a better term, a bit woke, but they balance it with everything else. Now I'm thinking, why was series so much fresher, so much better in the 70s, 80s, possibly in the 60s, but certainly the 70s and the 80s, as I remember, and the early 90s, than they are now? There was no reliance on special effects. Um, the actors actually had to act all the way through it. They had to speak at an audible level, yeah, and they had to probably there probably wasn't the ability to actually reshoot the right like there is now and everything else. They had to sometimes probably improvise to keep a scene alive. Yeah. Yeah, because it wasn't like you could put a CGI explosion behind you. They had to have the explosion, and if they got knocked over, they had to get up again and continue on with their job. Yeah, from looking at some of them, I think health and safety was not the biggest issue on a film set either. Well, we know that. Yeah, I've just found it quite an interesting thing to think about. Over to you, Steve, because I know you've got an interest in sort of older entertainment.
Well, it's funny you should say that, because I do.
Mm.
I talking about how culture has changed a lot and language has changed a lot. I remember watching recently the very first episode of Love Thy Neighbor.
Mm.
Right, Love Thy Neighbor is where the white guy lives next door, and the black guy just moves in with his wife, and his wife's really attractive, and the white guy is really, really racist. But the program tries to show that being racist is dumb,
Yeah.
because it's always the white guy who is the butt of the joke in the end. And so the language in them days was very different than it is today. And it's funny, because the I don't think the language used in them days was meant in the majority of the times in a derogatory way.
No.
You get things like on the buses. If you want misogyny, then you go and watch Reg Varney.
Yeah.
And on the book, Benny Hill.
Yeah.
Is another one. And so you talk about Minder. I binge watched Minder.
All right.
Okay. I really enjoyed watching Minder when I was a kid. And I binge watched Minder and smiled. Because the thing is, it draws back memories as well.
Yeah, of course.
Not just of what you're watching, but of what you used to get up to whilst you were watching back in the day.
Yeah.
And I sometimes watch older series, like Cheers.
Yeah.
Crossing the pond, going to the US.
Yeah.
Cheers.
Oh yeah.
Cheers. You can't beat a rom-com. Right? Because if the bloke is coming onto the woman and the woman is coming onto the man, but it's almost like it's the forbidden fruit, if you like, and the way that both of them are acting amongst themselves. These days, the bloke can't come onto the woman without screaming.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah.
But I think I can guarantee you that if the woman was interested in the bloke, she wouldn't scream help so loud. She wouldn't scream help so loud. She'd oh, don't be cheeky.
Yeah, the joke,
Anything like that to me.
Yeah.
And you know that if they've got a certain back and forth, and when they're speaking, there's something there. What really surprised me is that series like Seinfeld. When we watch these older series, we imagine that the actors and the actresses will be the same now as what they are when we watch them on the telly. Yeah. But Seinfeld was done in the 90s.
Yeah.
And so we're talking about 20, 30 years ago. So when you see an actor, when you see an actor these days, the real life person, not the character inside, sometimes we get really surprised at how they've changed visually, you know, of course.
Yeah,
But I mean, when you're lost in this world of
yeah,
television
yeah. Again,
programs, and
it's
you tend to watch them, you know, you like, for example, I'm sure that the professionals, the majority of the actors are dead.
well, out of the three main cast, there's only one that's still alive. Dial.
Yeah, right.
Yeah,
So,
yeah. What, you know, he's
you know,
still. I think he's still working. Yeah, but it's a. I mean, yeah. I mean, they did a lot of their own stunts and everything else, which made it even more interesting. But yeah, it's
but yeah. So anyway, as I
yeah,
was saying, you know,
yeah,
the language they used back
yeah,
then was a lot more liberal,
yeah.
um, and I think that an insult comes from um, the intention behind the word,
Exactly. Yeah.
and not necessarily the word
Mm,
itself. Uh, we just need to look here in Brazil. Here in
mm,
Brazil, when you call somebody negão,
yeah. Yeah.
you know, when I first heard that, I was frightened. I was
Yeah.
it
Wow.
scared me.
Yeah.
I said, I can't say that.
Yeah.
I can't say that.
Yeah.
Or a bloke will talk about a neguinha
Yeah.
a
Yeah.
neguinha at home.
Mm,
You know, you can't, if I said that, if I said that
yeah.
too
Well,
in
yeah.
England, there's, you know, I'll be, I'll be, I'll be hung, drawn, and quartered.
I must.
You know, but we say these
Yeah.
things here
Yeah.
in Brazil. And there's no malice. There's no malice. And
No.
if the people were offended, they'd say they were offended. You wouldn't use that word
No.
anymore.
Yes. It. It.
You
It.
know,
It.
depends on the intention behind the word.
Yeah. Exactly. And yeah. I mean, we all know what's insulting and things like this. Yeah. I mean, last time I was back in the UK, yeah, I had to temper what I said because even amongst us gringos here, sometimes the conversation uh, is can be quite robust in many ways.
Yeah.
And
Hmm.
if you're not switched into that, um, and yes, we will go back at each other, and sometimes that gets missed as well. Yeah, I'm not going to take that from him. Bang, and it goes, it goes, yeah, and then it scales up. But it's a, yeah, so it's certainly interesting. I mean, like I say, I was watching this last night. I was just sort of thinking. There's a couple of other series I've been watching and thinking about, and films I've caught second time round. They're obviously available for streaming that yeah you wouldn't make now. And again, the internet's full of films they would not make now. And you look at it and you think Porky's. Um, I won't say Porky's was a brilliant film. No, no way.
No.
Um, it was entertaining at the time. Yeah, watch it now. It's not that shocking. Yeah, I mean, yeah. The scene. Yeah. The scene where they're in laughing in the staff room is just a classic, and you know exactly what they're talking about. And I got yeah. When you try and show it to Brazilians, you got eyes, yes, tears streaming down your own eyes. You just can't explain the context behind it in polite society. Um, yeah, and other things as well. It was always, but it was harmless. I mean, again, the other one, classic one, is Alf Garnett, which showed the absolute bigot. The character always, yeah, he was the way he was. The joke always came back on him to the same level. I
Yeah.
mean, you had I wouldn't say
Hmm.
you had sympathy with him. You hated him. Um, yeah, the way he did things, but it always came back. That was always the joke behind it. He was the main character who should be like the person that's should be the hero almost, and he was really he was to go through it because of his attitude. Um, and we all knew
Well,
people like that.
people
Yeah,
people thought it was
yeah,
funny because he was so
yeah.
wrong,
That's it.
and his character just didn't care.
Yeah,
You know, he'd say what he'd want to say, and it would be so
yeah,
wrong. And even his wife, putting a cup of tea in front of him, she'd be all
yeah,
calm, and he's going. He gets tighter and tighter and tighter
yeah,
and tighter when he's
yeah,
speaking, and his venom, and it's people, and it looks people thought it funny because he'd get so
yeah.
intense,
Brilliant acting. Yeah,
uptight about something that isn't really important
exactly.
as
Yeah.
well. You
Yeah,
know,
and obviously they produced in Problems of the Day. That yeah, and again, you couldn't make these programs now, but they were highlighting the issues at the time, making us think. I mean, I
yeah,
come from a generation. Let's be. No, I'm going to get into this too much. A generation just behind you, where your generation introduced sort of tolerance, start to introduce tolerance, understanding, and everything else. My generation sort of embraced it a bit. Yeah, I mean, the Gen X, yeah, we started to understand it, not perfectly. Um, we would, and now we've produced the millennials and the Gen Zs who have really gone probably so much the other way with it all, to the point of, oh, we got to be worried about everything we say in case we upset one person who might feel offended. They might have to go to their safe room, safe space. Yeah, have to have a day off work and everything else. Yeah, whereas our generation didn't matter what happened, you went into work the next day because you didn't want to show that you've been beaten. Yeah, we've got a slightly different thing. Um, of course, nobody can go around yelling and everything else. So there were probably some quite inappropriate things, certainly dating back. But you took it for what it was. I mean, even this program yesterday, it did show, yeah, one of the main characters in there showed degrees of of racism, but that all changed at the end of it when, yeah, basically, yeah, a bit of misogyny came involved, but it sort of counteracted the racism, as it were. And it was to making a point. I mean, late 70s, yeah, because I mean, some of the films I watched and all that, I like the musical films from then, the punk scene, like Breaking Glass, again, would highlight these issues. Um, Whether or not they were really predominantly existed or not, even then, I question. Um, because I grew up when certainly around London, when I used to visit, you didn't think anything of someone from a different ethnic background to you walking down the street. You just didn't think about it.